here we are again. And I wanted to emphasize, even though last month I had been so deeply involved in the sons of Belial and Belial thinking, that the First John record that talks about greater is he that is in you than he who is in the world, and indeed is in an Antichrist context. And it says that, Christ in you is greater than the Antichrists in the world. And they are from the world, therefore they speak as from the world. 1 John 4, 1 through 6, everybody who's on the phone, and those of you who are on the video. Verse 5 is that they are from the world. These Antichrists are from the world, therefore they speak from the world, and the world listens to them. It's a continual stroke, folks. It will not change. You're going to have the world that will just not listen to God. They'll listen to themselves jabber. Therefore, they speak as from the world, and the world listens to them. We, however, are from God. He who knows God listens to us. He who is not from God does not listen to us. Pretty damn simple. By this we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. Now, in some times past, this gave me this great badge of courage, this big puffed out chest of, whoa, I'm just going to attack everybody who's ungodly, and I'm going to go out there and stand against this and that and this and that, and you get your ears pinned back, or you get your wrists slapped, and you're just like, oh, where's God? Where's Christ in me? And we were taught, and so many of us were taught, that it's Christ in you, the hope of glory, and that gave you a sonship right to pretty much dump on everybody else. And that is not where this verse in context is going. It's just to give you a sense that in all of these Antichrist contexts, the 4 in 1 John and 2 John, and all of the Belial contexts, the 26 of them in the Hebrew scriptures, that you just be smart about this, folks. Don't be rash. Get some intellect. Get some wisdom. Don't just speak whatever comes in your brain, Remember that David, the King David, he ran the kingdom. He was the king. Did not want to deal with these sons of Belial because it said, read the Psalms in those 26 verses that I gave you. You couldn't put your finger on them. They would slide left and right. They would get out from under whatever edict. What did we learn from last session, maybe a little bit from the session before? The term Belial is not worthless. It is, ready? Lawless. Okay? Lawless. We'll see a little bit more about that tonight. So by review, first is the coming of a single entity. It also, number 2, mentions that there are many antichrists in the world today. Paul shows the antithesis of Christ with the Belial record, and that's how we got to the sons of Belial in the Hebrew scriptures. And they, quote unquote, went out from us. The language there took us from 1 John, paralleled through Deuteronomy 13, and where we find ourselves dealing with Belial and Belial thinking. It's just lawlessness. So then Nahum, we came up the last couple slides from last month's Antichrist teaching was in Nahum, and we're going to go review that tonight. But I wanted to show you how it works sometimes. You start with 1 John, top left, and you go to 1 Corinthians 6:15, because that's where Paul talks about Christ versus Belial. And then from there you go to Deuteronomy, where the first usage of Belial is, and then you go through the 26 uses of Belial in the Hebrew scriptures, and you find out, as we did, that it's not worthless, it's lawless. We'll go a little bit into Nahum again tonight, and then from Nahum we're going to jump back to Paul again, 2 Thessalonians 2:3, where it's the man of lawlessness. darkness. And therefore, full circle, you start with the one. There's the many antichrists in the world today, the sons of Belial, always secretive. It's kind of like, none dare call it conspiracy. It's they're pulling, the puppeteer is pulling the strings behind the scenes, and no doubt he is. And the lessons you can learn from all of those 26 usages, that deserves, probably 5 or 6 hours worth of taking apart the social situation of David's time and after David's time, and how he did not confront the sons of Belial face to face because it wasn't worth it. He wasn't going to get anywhere. And yet he, later in the Psalms, of course, he says, I'm surrounded by floods of ungodly men. And anyway, I think that full circle, we go through those 26 uses of sons of Belial and Belial thinking. It's not just the sons of Belial or Belial thinking, but you'll see in Nahum, let's just go to Nahum. It says in Nahum 1:11, for from you one has gone out. It's the same ex erchomai that's used in 1 John and in Deuteronomy 13:13 in the Septuagint. You have to go there, right? This is research night. Put on your thinking caps, Tom. Terrific. This is not just milky milk stuff. This is stuff you have to think about. So you go to the one has gone out from in Nahum, and you realize that John used that terminology. Moses used that terminology in Deuteronomy 13:13 and elsewhere. And he plots evil against the Lord, one who counsels wickedness. So, as we will see tonight, I think this is from last month, this is the one record that points to the end times, the Nahum 1:11. From all the Belial uses, the one individual is back on the scene, and that's why we're in this part 3 of the Antichrist, Christ and Antichrist, part 3. And he's the Antichrist, quote-unquote, figure. It's all about the text and context. Let's just read. Nahum, circa 660 to 650 BC. It's very difficult to pinpoint the prophesical, I guess is the word, reign of Nahum, because there's no real marker. I mean, there's the fall of Thebes, Thebes, in Egypt. I believe it's in chapter 3. But you can't really tell when Nahum is writing. So I did a lot of work on this, and about 650 to 660 BC, probably before the reign of Josiah, this makes a difference, when Assyria was in complete control of the Fertile Crescent. Okay, that's the Mesopotamia, between the two rivers, Mesopotamia, hippopotamus, water, horse, hippopotamus, Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent. But Judah had not yet been taken, wow, can't spell, to Babylon. So here's Nahum, the oracle of Nineveh. Woo, what's Nineveh, folks? Gentiles. Kind of like Jonah, right? Why am I going to the Gentiles? I'm a Jew. I'm a really good Jew. The book of the vision of Nahum, the Elkoshite. Don't know what that means. Some of you get back to me. A jealous and avenging God is the Lord. A Lord avenging and wrathful. A Lord takes vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserves wrath for his enemies. Does that put you in a particular state of mind when reading Nahum? When is the day of vengeance of our God? It's future. It's called the day of the Lord elsewhere, but you'll see it in a minute. But this sets the context of Nahum. The Lord is slow to anger and great in power. The Lord will by no means leave the guilty unpunished. In a whirlwind and a storm is his way. The clouds are dust beneath his feet. Let me take you back a little bit here. The ancient Near East cosmological construct is God sits on a throne in the highest heaven, And when he comes to the earth, he has the clouds under his feet. He throws bolts of lightning. There's nothing wrong with this picture, folks. It's not a figure of speech. It's how they thought. Read Psalm 18. I think it's 2 Samuel 22 is the same poetic context where, it's amazing how the prophets thought that God would come. And here, it's in a whirlwind and a storm his way. The clouds are the dust beneath his feet. He rides on a chariot drawn by cherubim. It's a picture of complete and utter strength and glory to these people. Okay? Verse 4, he rebukes the sea. Oh, really? Makes it dry. What sea is that? It's the celestial sea, but the contextual understanding of the sea and making it dry also points to the Exodus, where God split the sea. These things that are in the Bible, where in Genesis 1:2, he hovers over the waters and then fixes creation that was messed up by a dragon. These things continually come up in the prophets. Don't miss them. They're gems. But God rebukes the sea, makes it dry. He dries up all the rivers of Bashan and Carmel. All the rivers. Bashan and Carmel withered. What does that mean? Bashan is where it's where Mount Hermon is. It's where in Genesis 6, the original of the Lord and the coming of the Lord, who is slow to anger, right? The blossoms of Lebanon wither. Where's Lebanon? Gentile country, as is Bashan and Carmel, except that they're occasionally associated with even Israel. Tribe of Dan relocated from the coastline up in Bashan. That's another teaching. Who can stand before his indignation, the Lord's indignation? Who can endure the burning of his anger? His wrath is poured out like fire, oh duh, and the rocks are broken up by him. What does that sound like? It sounds like earthquakes and nasty stuff that sounds like, oh my goodness, the end times, the day of the Lord. Well, however, verse 7 says that the Lord is good, is a stronghold in the day of trouble. I highlighted that because day of trouble, whose trouble do you think that is? It's the same word from this day. His context, even though you'll hear some things here that depict the time period of 660 BC and Nineveh's overthrow, which happened. But as in all prophecy and prophetic working out, we'll see it again in Daniel later, there are two applications, the present and the future. Here's the future. The Lord is good, the stronghold in the day of trouble. He knows those who take refuge in him. Thank God, right? Nahum 1 continued, verse 8, but with an overflowing flood, he will make a complete end of its sight. This is back to Nineveh. And will pursue his enemies into darkness. If you can't see who uses darkness except in an apocalyptic context? Whatever you devise against the Lord, he'll make a complete end of it. Distress will not rise up twice. Like tangled thorns and like those who are drunken with their drink, they are consumed as stubble, completely withered. With what? Fire. We just read about that a few verses ago. From you, and here's our context, has gone forth ex erchomai, one who plotted evil against the Lord, a wicked, it's Boston language, wicked counselor, a Belial or lawless advisor. One went out from you. Now some say, and you can read, it's all over the map. Some people say, well, went out from you, that's Jews. He's got to be a Jew. I don't know. Lord, says the Lord, though they are at full strength, Even so, they'll be cut off and pass away. Though I have afflicted you, I will afflict you no longer, talking about Israel. And so now I will break his, and who's the antecedent there, the Belial advisor. I will break his yoke bar from upon you, and I will tear off your shackles. The Lord has issued a command concerning you, the advisor. Your name will no longer be perpetuated. I will cut off idol and image from the house of your gods, and I will prepare your grave, for you are contemptible. You're contemptible. Behold, on the mountains the feet of him who brings good news, who announces peace. Celebrate your feasts, O Judah. Pay your vows, for never again will the wicked one, and it's the word Belial, lawless one, pass through you. He is completely cut off completely. So, going to Paul's usage, but let's reflect a bit. Please do not forget completely cut off. Please do not forget fire. Please do not forget the lawless one. And how could we? In 2 Thessalonians, because Paul brings it up and ties together our context completely. 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 10, and we'll jump around a little bit here, but please here's where the Nahum record and all the Belial records tie into the Antichrist. Now, we request you, brethren, with regard to the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together to him, rapture, if you will, that you not be quickly shaken from your composure or be disturbed either by spirit or a message or letter as if from us, to the effect that, the day of the Lord has come. Let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come unless the apostasy comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. Do you not remember that while I was with you, I was telling you these things? Now, most translations, as I point out here, have the man of sin. That's not the word, folks. I've given you the Greek here. Anthropos tes anomias. No law. Before nomos. Nomos is the word for law. No law. Why they translated man of sin, I don't know. Maybe it's a textual variant. Somebody can get back to me. But I didn't have the time to check that today. King James has man of sin. It's the man of lawlessness. That's how we know it's Antichrist. And then there's a lot of this is knowledge in first century Palestine. Paul is not saying something new here. Who else knew of this guy? What did Jesus say? Or what did Jesus know? WDJS and WDJK. Jesus knew of this guy. Matthew 24, 15, and 16. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, notice it's capitalized. That's a quote from the Hebrew Scriptures, book of Daniel, which was spoken of, there it is, Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand, then those who are in Judah must flee to the mountains. Jesus thought, bottom of the screen, please, Jesus thought people would see this all come to pass. What's wrong with the picture? Jesus didn't know of, didn't know of the coming church. So let's take a brief aside here, because this is critical. The timetable, Jesus thought this would come to pass very soon. I mean, is the next slide what I want? No. In the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the Olivet Discourse, I think I give it to you a couple, there they are, a couple slides later, Olivet Discourse, Matthew 24, 25, Mark 13, and Luke 21. Jesus lays out a coming time of what great tribulation. It's not the tribulation as they would want you to say. It's a time of great tribulation, which, by the way, did not come to pass immediately after Jesus' death, resurrection, ascension, and seating at the right hand of the Father. And this caused some consternation in the early church. But it's critical that you understand he expected it. Jesus is not God, okay? Maybe that's on the next. There it is. What did Jesus know? And he didn't know everything because he wasn't God. Please, please, please understand that Jesus is a man. He's still a man. He is coming back as a man, even though he's the head of all principality and power. He's got all kinds of power and glory and all this stuff. But he didn't know everything. So when he said the stuff like he said here, when you see this stuff where the abomination of desolation in the temple, then hightail it out of Jerusalem and get to the mountains. He's talking to an audience that he fully expected to see this come to pass. And by the way, folks, it didn't. I have written a chapter in the book, Secret of God, or God Had a Secret. And the name of it is, the chapter is, What Did Jesus Know and When Did He Know? And I'm going to read you a little bit from here because it's critically important regarding the tribulation period, okay? Jesus knew more than just the coming of a kingdom. He knew of the bad years that intervened between the present time in which he spoke and the actual establishment of a Messiah's earthly throne. He even spoke of the acceptable year of the Lord. You guys remember that, right? His ministry to Israel, which came before the horrendous time, the day of vengeance of our God. And here I give you some verses. As the time neared for his murder, and as he learned more and more about the timing of his own sacrifice, the Lamb of God, Jesus began to speak of the perilous time in increasing frequency and insightfulness. He spoke of the temple being destroyed and about Jews being persecuted. He spoke of horrible distress for the Jewish nation. But this was to be no ordinary suffering. It was, as he said, to be a great tribulation, such has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will. There's that verse in Matthew 24, which is part of the Olivet Discourse, right? That's some distress. The gospel writers spend a lot of time on this, coming eschatological phase. In theological circles, the speeches at the end of the Gospels are the Olivet Discourse. Yeah, Bob. The Gospel of John alludes to it in chapter 1333 through 1726 in speeches about the coming Comforter, which was to help the Jews in their time of need. Most people don't see that. They want the Comforter to be for us, Christians here on the planet. No. Contextually, the Comforter was to help Jews through the tribulation. Don't miss that. Oh my goodness. Let me go down to the next section here. If you guys want a copy of this, write to me. The period of turmoil for the Jewish people is referred to in the Hebrew Scriptures, time of Jacob's trouble. There it is. Okay, and prophet Daniel refers to it as a time of trouble, Daniel 12:1, such as never since there was a nation, even to that same time. Sounds like Jesus, right? And we go here, careful reader, pardon me, went too fast. Careful reader of his speech in Matthew, you can see Jesus knew the time and also referred to the Daniel record. I want to get through this because the tribulation period, very important to Christian believer in that it was not predicted for him or her. It was predicted for thy people, as the angel Gabriel tells Daniel, okay, thy people. That's in Daniel 9, okay? Daniel's people were the Jews. Jeremiah, in the context above, says it is destined for, quote, my people Israel and Judah. I'll give you the quote here. In every context where this age is mentioned, it is referencing what? Israel. Comfort is not for you, Christians. It was for Israel for a particular reason, because the, defecation was going to hit the rotating oscillator, folks. In every context where this age is mentioning, it's Israel. Another significance is that the period of intense persecution, this time of overwhelming peril for the Jews, has not yet occurred. Certainly, any person watching the national persecution of Jewish people over the years and since Jesus lived on earth will admit that they've had it rough. But can we really say that that this kind of thing, the Jacob's trouble, has happened? Brings us back to the question proposed by the title of this chapter, since in hindsight it appears that Jesus did not have the theological forecast correct, okay? He just didn't know certain things because, quote, it was and all the church said, a secret. Let me explain. Okay, verily, here's in chapter 24:34. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Same in Mark and Luke, okay? Those are parallel records. I think it is C.S. Lewis who said that the Matthew verse here is the most embarrassing verse in the entire Bible, because you couldn't explain it with Jesus as God. But if he's not God, all you say is he didn't know about it. Okay, you don't have to run around and cover your head. Because he is considered God, the Son, by traditional triune dispensational Christianity, they have not read these verses at face value. In their estimation, if Jesus were God, he could not make an error by virtue of the lack of knowledge, because he would have known everything, right? Especially the future. They've run around in theological circles, trying to avoid these verses above, or at least trying to sidestep them, and I've given some footnotes here. The fact that the generation of Jesus' time actually did pass away has caused no end of confusion. But we, who do not believe Jesus was God, are not hampered by illogic and can read these verses as they were written. We can allow a man to be a man and not know something, in this case, the exact timing of the time of Jacob's trouble. Okay, that's enough of this. I just wanted you to see that right in Matthew 24, Jesus has said, that I'm going back to my PowerPoint. Jesus has said that, this is going to happen, but then it didn't. And then the church happened, and it was progressively revealed over time that Jesus was gone to heaven. He's up there dealing with the forces in heaven. He is the head of all principality and power. That means he is the head. He's the leader up there, and he's building his church up there. And he's our church is something absolutely brand new. Okay, so let's go. We want to go back to the lawless one, okay, in Thessalonians. Keep what I said in mind as I'm reading here. Back here in the Christian context of 2 Thessalonians, I have 1 Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians, and what or that which restrains him now, the lawless one, so that in his time he will be revealed. For the secret of lawlessness is already at work. Someone mute themselves, please. I just heard maybe it was a canary. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. Then that lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath, the pneuma of his mouth, and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming. That is, the one whose coming is in accord with the activity of Satan, well, you think, and all power and signs and false wonders with that. And with the what? Deception of wickedness for those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. In the middle of this slide, you see that I point to Isaiah 11:4. We'll get right to that. Just hold on. Has to do with slaying him with the breath of his mouth. That's why we can use Isaiah 11:4 as a context of Antichrist. And then I posit a few things. Is Antichrist an angel? And can angels die? Because it says here, that the Lord is going to slay him. The word is slay, folks. Slay him with the breath of his mouth. And I wanted you to know that the verb here, to bring to an end, is the same verb that's in 1 Corinthians 2:6, where the princes of this age, the rulers of this age, come to naught, come to nothing. And if you want to tie that into Ezekiel, I believe it is, or maybe it's Isaiah, I can't remember. He will come to nothing on the earth. The term come to naught, bring to an end, same if you were to work the Hebrew and the Greek together, you'd find that there are tens of contexts that, I can't say, you can't say hundreds, tens of contexts that use the word come to nothing in relation to angelic beings. And so my things here, can angels die? Is this guy an angel? I don't know. It says his coming is in accord with the activity of Satan, and we have to work some of this stuff up. People want to say he's a man. Fine. Is he a manly man? Is he an angelly man? We're going to look at a few things. Isaiah, I wanted to read this to you. This is the Isaiah record, just so you have it in the PowerPoint if you want it. A shoot will bring forth from the stem of Jesse, and a branch from his roots will bear fruit. The stem of Jesse. Jesse was David's father, right? We're talking about the anointed one, the true Christ. The Spirit of the Lord will rest upon him. Where have you seen that before? Okay. The Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and strength, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord. And he will not judge by what his eyes see, as Eli did when he was looking at Hannah, but nor will he make a decision by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he will judge the poor. He will decide with fairness for the afflicted of the earth. He will strike the earth. Oh, now it changes. He's going to be a nice guy. And then he's going to strike the earth with the rod of his mouth and the breath of his lips. And he will slay what? The wicked one. Septuagint, the ungodly one. We're talking of the one here, okay? And I gave you this a couple of sessions ago, the Targums, which in the red highlighted area, with the speech of his lips, he will slay Amalek the wicked. And I've given you the Septuagint at the bottom. It's really the ungodly one. Just a little more fodder for your canon. Before I move on to the angel context, I wanted you guys to know that which restrains, or who restrains the Antichrist from coming, who's on third, I don't know. Who's on first, what's on second, I don't know, is on third. I don't know, and I'm not going to guess who restrains the Antichrist from coming on the scene, or what that which can be the translation in Thessalonians. You want it to be the church, go ahead. I mean, it fits into your theology if you have the rapture coming and then all of a sudden he shows up. But what if he shows up before the rapture? This is a question for many people these days as to whether the Antichrist will come and rise up and be known before the rapture. I don't know. I was talking to Rob Woods about this. I just don't know. Others want it to be an angelic power that's holding down the opening of the bottomless pit. I don't know. But as I'm moving along here, I find that the possibility that the dude is angelic in nature and not just filled with Satan, as someone want to say it, a man that is, and the only problem that people have with it being an angelic personality or an angelic being is the language that says he's going to die. Well, folks, angels die. I think it's in Ezekiel that it says he will come to ashes on the earth. That guy, I think it's the Lucifer context. Maybe it's Isaiah 13:14. But I wanted to go quickly to Psalm 82, which is the quintessential verses on angelic death. Okay, and here's from Michael Heiser. I just put it in here so you'd have it. Let's read it. Psalm 82:1. God, Elohim, stands in the divine assembly, the Be'adat El, the divine assembly, the assembly of gods. He, parallel record, judges among the gods. Also Elohim. So you've got God, Elohim, and the little gods, Elohim. And they're in this council, or assembly if you want. It's also called Sod, S-O-D in Hebrew. In other places, that's transliteration. How long, says God, will you judge unjustly? He's talking, God, the Elohim, is talking to the gods, Elohim, and he's saying, how long are you going to judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Defend the poor and fatherless. I'll put in here, you idiots. Do justice to the afflicted and the needy. That's your job. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They, the Elohim, know not. They do not know. Neither will they, the Elohim, understand. They, the Elohim, walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. Then God says here in verse 6, I have said, you are gods, and all of you are the sons of the Most High. B'nai Elyon, the Most High. But, here it is, you shall die like Adam and fall like one of the shining ones. And here I want you just to put your own thoughts together. Arise, O God, judge the earth and the nations. Just who do you think that might be? Oh God. That, my friends, is Jesus the Christ. So, we're going to go to Daniel. Put your mind on hold for a minute. This guy could be angelic. I mean, you read the records of Daniel. I'm not going to read them tonight because I put the Bible app on my phone, and I just listen at times right now because my eyes are not so great and it's hard to read. But I just listened to Daniel 10, 11, and 12 in just reading in the NASB, the New American Standard. And it was awesome to see how many things in those records, which we're going to get to a little bit, made sense to me just by listening. I'm going to listen to them 3 or 4 times. And why do we want to go to Daniel? Because these are the 3 areas in the center section, the Abomination of Desolation, where Daniel 9:27, 11:31, and 12:11 refer to the thing which Jesus spoke about as taking place in a temple. Okay, brief aside here. Slow your minds down. Jesus said this abomination was going to happen, right? In the holy place, and it literally is the temple. We'll get into that in Daniel. And you know what? That didn't happen in Jesus' time, nor did it happen before 70 AD, this time break that preterists and covenant and even dispensational theologians want to have, that, well, the temple was destroyed. Well, no, it wasn't, but it was knocked down. But no abomination of desolation occurred between, let's call it, when was Jesus speaking in Matthew 24? Let's call it 28. Pentecost of that year was June 17th, 28. So it was 28 AD to 70 AD. So what Jesus spoke of didn't come to pass. Guess what that means, folks? it's still future. Okay? It's going to happen in the day of the Lord. Does everybody follow that? The abomination of desolation, which Jesus predicted and Paul spoke about in 2 Thessalonians 2, has not occurred. Don't let anyone trick you about that. It didn't happen yet. Jesus is pointing out of the far prophecy in a future temple. Critics want everyone to think this occurred in the Roman destruction of 70 AD. It did not. There's no way you can put that in the crucible of textual, text versus text, and show me that the Roman destruction of Jerusalem and the knocking down of the temple had anything to do with this prophecy. So here are the 3 records in Daniel. We're just going to read these 3 records. I'm going to make a few comments because if we were to read them, it would just take too much time, and I've gone an hour so far, so might be a little less tonight than it is on a typical research night. These 3 contexts. Daniel 9:27. Let me just make sure you recall that I did a teaching, it might have been back in 2015, called The Tribulation, where I explained to you Daniel 9:24 through 27, and Daniel's 70 weeks of years, and how Jesus, the Messiah, was cut off. If you read those 4 verses, you find out that the Messiah was cut off. And then in Daniel 9:27, you see that in reference to Antichrist, it says, he will, Daniel 9:27, confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7th, he will put the end of the sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of the temple, he will set up, there it is, an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out unto him. And then the next context, and that's why I said I was reading Daniel 10, 11, and 12 here, just to get a feel of them. Oh, the first context is of what is called in those verses the coming prince, and not a nice one. And most translations have it as a coming prince who makes a covenant with Israel and then breaks it here, as it says. But, if you've listened to any of my teachings over the last 5 years, you understand that when the Hebrew prophets use the word prince, it's not a dude sitting on a throne in some kingdom all the time. Prince is the word leader. The context that comes to mind that'll help you understand it the most is 1 Corinthians 2. The princes of this world is King James, I believe. It's the rulers, the leaders of this age, who are not men. And neither is this guy here in Daniel 9:27. Okay, he's not a man. And you can read it. Go ahead back there and read it. And here, the prince in chapters 10 through 12, my little note in the blue there, he might not be the one. And this is the, it's not a problem. It's a situation to be solved. It's something we're not going to get into tonight as to whether all these characters, I'll call them because they are characters, in Daniel 9 through 12, which one is the Antichrist? It's hard to tell. There's the king of the south. There's the king of the north. There's the guys coming from the east. There's the guys coming from the west. But then the king stands up and he reviles against this guy. And then the mighty one stands up and does this. And you know what? Sometimes I don't know if it matters that much if you just get the feel of those chapters by reading them over and over again. And I don't know if it matters as much as you think it does, that in the book of Revelation you got the false prophet and you got you got this guy and you got the beast and you got the whore of Babylon and you got this. They're just so much evil. But how much does it matter to your life at the moment that you know who it is? We might get into it in the future, but right now it's like, All I'm trying to do with this Antichrist teaching is tell you and show you that we patterned it out from 1 John back to the Hebrew scriptures, through all the sons of Belial to the one who went forth in Nahum, and then he was a lawless one, and Paul calls him the lawless one. Jesus, and says he's going to desecrate the temple. Jesus knew the same guy who was going to desecrate the temple, and here we are back in Daniel. So let's look at Daniel 11:31. Forces from him will arise, desecrate the sanctuary fortress, and do away with the regular sacrifice. They will set up the abomination of desolation. I put a little note in here. This context is about despicable me. Read verse 21. The NASB calls him the despicable one. That's great. And then in Daniel 12:11 through 12, from the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. How blessed is he who keeps waiting and attains to the 1,335 days. And here we begin all the counting and all the numbers in the 7 years and half the 7 years. And you know what? I made a decision not to get into that. Some of you may know it. I have read enough prophecy books to make your ears bleed. And none of them agree, because I don't think they've handled the Word of God correctly. And in the future, if God decides not to send Jesus back, I don't use the word the Lord tarries, because it's not up to the Lord, it's up to God. I don't use the word the Lord tarries. If God decides not to send Jesus back for a few decades, I might get into it. But you're going to have to look at all the apocalypses. What, of John, Ezekiel, or Daniel? All three, folks, and a lot more to it, because there's Zechariah, there's places in Jeremiah, there's places all over the Hebrew scriptures. I heard it said this week, 24% of prophetic literature in the Hebrew scriptures relates to the future Israel, and you might just say that that's under the time of tribulation and the millennial kingdom. 24%. And here we've got covenant theologians telling us, well, it's all done. Yeah, what's had happened in the church. It's all finished. There's no future for Israel. Most of them are preterists. But the information in Daniel is quite extensive, easy to follow. Just turn on your Bible and listen to it a while, and then make signs and graphs and this, the him and the king and the prince and the princess, and notable. There are notable in John's revelation. Records in Ezekiel contribute. Gog of Magog. Okay? Yet none of these records will help you figure it out entirely. You have to really piece it together. The false prophet, the beast, the destroyer, as I was saying earlier, the deceiver, the one, the many. And who's the whore of Babylon? I don't know. And I'm not going to tell you that it's the Pope. What a bunch of malarkey. How short-sighted do you want to be? You know, it's not some Muslim in... All right, I don't know if it's a Muslim in Babylon today. You know? Reading and fitting together the records from A to Z is the only way to do it, and I'm not there. Okay? No two writers of prophetic interpretation agree. Is he an Arab? Is he a Muslim? Is he Jewish? Is he a Gentile? Is he an angel in the flesh? Bob doesn't know. Is the beast of Revelation 13 the guy? Is Gog of Magog? Oh my God. That could be the guy. Is it the little horn of Daniel 7 and 8? The whore of Babylon, or is he from the tribe of Dan? That's one where you might want to just hold your questions, because I don't know. And it'll take 3 more sessions for me to sort through all this, and I haven't got the time for that right now. There's other things pressing on my consciousness. But folks, the Antichrist is a real dude. I don't know the answers to so many of these questions that are pressing. They seem to be pressing on people that they spend inordinate amounts of time in mathematics. folks, I'm an engineer. I don't mind math. I don't mind calculus, trigonometry, algebra. But I do mind when you spend inordinate amounts of time trying to figure out who's the guy, and you don't even know if he's here yet. Because it says, in his time, he will show up. It says that in Daniel, too. Just reread Daniel 10, 11, and 12. It says that same exact verbiage, and I'm gonna try to parallel that for myself. You know, in his time, he'll show up. And then we'll either deal with him or hopefully we won't deal with him. Because as David, the king, the prophet, the psalmist said, I didn't say necessarily, but you can't nail him down. And it's no way, I love this word, inexorable. Antichrist is going to come. He's going to destroy, deceive, wreak havoc on the world. And you're not going to know where he's coming from, but greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. And the secret, the mystery of lawlessness, that same guy, is already at work. The secret is already, quote unquote, out. They're moving and they're shaking, and you probably know this. And so don't be afraid, don't be scared. You know, go about your business and save people. Pull them out of the fire, it says in, what is it, Jude, Titus, one of those singularity books. Go find people and pull them out of the fire and teach them about Jesus and how they can speak in tongues and get word of knowledge, a word of wisdom. So now I'll end the sharing here.